Hi guys, welcome back.
Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hi. Man, I just tried to open my Maya and guess what? Like that problem that I had the other day with the preference folder getting corrupted. Same thing, man. I have no idea why. But fortunately, now I know how to do it. And I'm just going to fix it very quickly here. You just delete that. But it's just like so messed up, man. Documents, let's go to my, gonna have to set up my preferences again. Sucks. I don't know what's causing the corruption, but let me just start here. Let's start sharing my screen right there. And then let's start Maya. And now I'm going to have to set up it should be fast. Like I'm just going to go through those settings very fast just to make sure everything is good. So for today, normally like every month, every time I teach those classes, I change a little bit, it's like the way that I would say like the order of things, not by much, but just like seeing what fits better. So in this case today, what I'm going to be doing, so you see like right now, it should be fine. I just have to load those plugins again. But let me just get this one closed once again and just make sure that I have my my custom shelf saved. Let me just do this now. And then shelves, let's just put it back in there. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure everything is good. So today I was thinking about like talking a little bit more about the size of the eyes and then also positioning and rotation. Because the intention today is to do some renders. So we want to make sure that everything is in the correct proportion and everything. And of course, like we're going to be talking about the anatomy of the eye and how the construction of the eye is done and all the shaders and everything, but this is going to be a little bit later. For this week, it's just like we're going to focus on those first steps, assembling our scenes, putting the model together as a sketch and then projecting to the topology and then doing a few renders, it's like just to make sure that things are working. So let's see if everything is good here. I got my shelf back. Okay. I'm going to open a scene in here. Make sure I have my my project set as well. So let me just check very fast here. Before, when I talked about creating the project environment, we use the project window in here. But now that we have everything correct already, I just have to do like a set project. And in this case here, I just have to point to my folder where the project is, which in this case here is going to be personal projects, and then it's going to be right here. So the top one. So now if I try to open anything, obviously it's going to point straight to that folder. But I'm going to open another scene here. That's the one I had from last year that I have some eyes in here. Let's go to scenes, and then let's open this one, all eyes here. And this scene was created before I was using the ACES color, So you're going to see like the color space, it was before ACES. So you see there's a message here that says all color spaces used in the scene are not defined in the selected transform collection. Affect color spaces will not be applied. So basically what's going to happen here is that the colors are not going to render correctly because remember, like we had to do some conversions, right? So if I click again, like this icon here for preferences, and I go to settings in here, color management, you see that I have like all my, it's like my settings for the for ACES are in there. I'm gonna have to tweak a little bit because now I basically like corrupted my file, so I'm gonna have to do a couple of things here. So I'm gonna just do this. I'm gonna reapply some rules in here. I'm gonna do manually. So I'm gonna do like PNG. I'm gonna add that. I'm gonna add like HDR. It's kind of good to remember this. So and then EXR. Let's do some JPEG and then TIFF, something like that. So for the TIFF, I'm going to consider like 32-bit TIFF. So I'm going to just do it like the HDR. And let's switch this one to match it, so HDR. And then here, in this drop down, I'm going to switch to utility, linear sRGB. So this one is going to be like for texture in general. But this one here is going to be utility. Where is it? Let's see, utility. Linear Adobe, Linear Adobe RGB. This one's gonna be, let's do it first like for PNG. Let's do this. So the other ones are gonna do last. So let's do PNG right here. And then gonna be utilities, should be one of the last ones here. sRGB texture. And then I'm gonna do the same for the JPEG. Utility, sRGB texture. And then that's it. So for the other ones, for TIFF, EXR, and HDR, I'm gonna switch here too. So HDR, let's just confirm here. TIFF, I'm gonna switch to TIFF in here. Right there. JPEG is JPEG, EXR, EXR, HDR, HDR, PNG, PNG. Okay, so HDR, we're gonna switch to utility, linear, sRGB, EXR, utility, linear, sRGB. And then for the TIFF, in case I'm using like TIFFs like 32 bits straight from ZBrush, which is not gonna be the case in here, but they're gonna keep it in there just in case. So I have like my TIFF in sRGB, JPEG in sRGB texture. This one, linear sRGB again for EXR, linear sRGB for HDR. So basically, like once I have this in place, just checking here if everything's correct. Just uncheck that first one. Everything's good here. Let me just do this. I'm gonna just save it now. So what's gonna happen here, remember like I got that message before saying that the color space was different from the scene, right? So I can just go to color management in here now that I have everything set, and I can just say reapply rules to scene. And then it's gonna check like all the textures evolved in the scene, and you're gonna try to convert them to this color space, right? So look at the HDRI in the background, for example. I'm gonna just click reapply rules here. Didn't do much here, but let's see. Yeah, let's see if it's rendering. Sometimes it kind of like flickers and shows a little bit a different color, but let's see if it works like that. Let's see. Let's go to Arnold. I'm gonna open my render view for the first time in here. And my resolution should be, you see like I have this thing here, when I move stuff in Maya, it tries to dock, right? Like automatically, and I hate that feature. So you can turn it off, going to window workspaces, and then just click disable docking and undocking. So it's kind of like free now. It's not gonna automatically dock anything. So let's go to the settings here. And then I have everything set because this is saved with the scene itself. So I have like, let's see the resolution, 900 by 900. So everything should be good. One thing you're gonna do here, if you have a faster machine, you can do like in Arnold for the settings in here. I'm gonna actually reduce this one to 2 so it goes faster. You can click progressive render so that, you know, it's more interactive here for us to see stuff. Another thing I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna show you first, I believe like some of those textures here, they're gonna try to load and convert to TX, because here under textures, you see like I have all the convert textures to TX, which is that thing that I mentioned, like the first class, right? Arnold tries to convert everything to TX automatically unless you turn this off. So if I try to render something here, you're gonna see a pop-up. That's so bizarre, it didn't show the pop-up. Huh, it should be trying to convert those textures automatically. So let me turn it off here. Let's see if it does anything different. It's so interesting because even the color of the eye in here, it should be different. It's not like completely applying it. Let me just check very quickly. Although this, those eyeballs here, I'm not gonna need right now. Let's just like turn it off here. Let's see if I do it again. I'm just gonna double check like the textures for those specific eyes in there. So if I have it on the side, let me just get this a little bit closer like that. And then I'm gonna stop it right here. Let me just like make a little window so it's faster to iterate on that eyeball specifically. And then here, let me just check like my, if you click this little sphere in here, you can open your hypershade. And then if you select a bunch of objects like that, you can just say graph materials on selected objects. And that should basically frame everything for you in here. So let's see, in terms of textures, I just want to double check if the color for the iris is being affected or not. Oh, so, okay, I have some TIFFs in here, but those TIFFs are actually, they are not 32 bits. So what I'm gonna do, since I have those TIFFs that way, let me just go back in here, and I'm gonna go back to my color management, and I'm gonna go to my TIFF in here. Either I can just remove it altogether and let it do automatically whatever it chooses to do, or I can just force any TIFF to become like RGB here. So let's try the sRGB texture, right, for TIFF. And then I'm gonna just like reapply everything. Let's see, for example, if this second pair of eyes in there, if the color is gonna change now. Let's just try here. Let's see what happens. Nope, same thing. Yeah, well, anyway, about this, the render settings here, we're not going to be talking about today. I just wanted to show some stuff in here, and this is like a node scene. I'm going to have to, you know, see what's going on with it. I did this test actually earlier today, and I was able like to convert all the textures automatically. I don't know why it's not doing it. I think it has something to do with my preferences folder to get corrupted, definitely. But let's talk about what's important here, which is going to be the distances. Reason why I have like all those measurements in here. So I'm going to go to the top in here just to show you what I have in terms of measurement. If you go to Google and you type something like, let's see, something like this, let me just show you right there. Popularity distance. So basically, like, this is the distance between the pupils, obviously, right? So we have like the average in here, it says like 63 millimeters, right? You have like for kids between 43 and 58, and then for adults between 54 and 74. So I would say like 64, 63, definitely the average right there, right? So in this case here, I did like 63 for the average, but you're gonna notice something that's a little curious here, which is like the pupils, when you look from the front, it's just hide, like the eyeball itself. So it's kind of centered in the pupils in there, right? From the front, you can see like that the distance is 63, but when you look from the top, the eyes have a rotation. The eyeball have a rotation in here. And that's because like the eyes, they are never like 90 degrees, right? Like if you're looking at something really close, I mean, like if you put your finger right in front of your face and you start like pulling closer and closer, you're gonna cross your eyes, right? So you're definitely gonna get like straight, and then all the way it's gonna start like pointing inwards. But the natural position for the eyes, it's a little bit more relaxed. It's slightly tilted a couple of degrees. And then it's very interesting when you try to model, you know, it's like your character, and you put 90 degrees eyes, it always looks crossed-eye. It looks like it's looking at some point that's a little closer, right? But when you do this slight rotation, I use between like 2 degrees to 3 degrees, rotated outwards. When you do this type of rotation, it looks like your character is looking far away. So it's kind of like, instead of like looking to a point that's really close, it's almost like a diversion, right? Like it kind of like looks far away, and it makes creates this impression that your character is like is wondering about something. So it has thoughts. So you know, it's like the whole thing about like looking for a soul for the character, right? You have to be able to put something in there, you know, it's like that looks like the character is thinking about something, or the most like naturally possible, right? So by just doing this simple trick, rotating a little bit, you can achieve that like kind of like straight away. And obviously like the correct shaders and refraction and all this stuff we're going to be talking about later, next week probably, then obviously we're going to start putting all the pieces together. But let's do something very fast here. Let's create a polygon primitive. Let's do a cube. And then let's do this with a little bit of subdivision here. So let's do like 2 subdivisions. So we have a cube like that, just so we can actually look compared to the eyeball in there and see exactly, not exactly, but approximately how much we rotated that. So basically, like if I try to match that, you see that my rotation at this point is around, I would say like if I do like 2.5 in here, that's pretty close to the rotation that I have for the eyeball right there. It's probably 2.5 that I used. So that means like if you have your eyeball like frozen like that, if you freeze it, that means like you're gonna be rotating outwards about like 2.5 degrees to get something like this. And then there's a distance between the eyeballs themselves, right? Yesterday we talked about like the size of the eyeball, and it's not a perfect thing, obviously, because it's a little bit more squashed in a certain direction. But just to keep things simple, we consider kind of like almost like a ping pong ball with a little bulge, right? We're going to be talking about this as well later, about like this curvature in here, like for the cornea, right? But the eyeball itself, we are considered like for simplicity, pretty much like a sphere, right? So I'm actually measuring this sphere, and I'm doing creating a measurement of 24 millimeters, right? So let's just double check here from my settings. I have millimeters, right? So that means like I have 2.4. So if I switch to centimeters, obviously it's going to be, you know, it's like 2.4, right? Now we have a little dot in there. So 2.4, 1.2, 6.3. Let's go back in here, millimeters. So 1.2. So basically, like the way to figure it out, like the size of the iris, the average size of the iris is very simple, right? You just get 24 for the average size of the eyeball, and half of that is the iris. So you have about like 12. But then obviously, when we're talking about the shaders, we're gonna be talking about like how much the edge of the iris fades when it combines to this with the sclera, right? Like we're gonna have a single object around a disc. The disc is gonna be it's a disc with a hole in there. It looks like a little volcano, actually. That's gonna be the iris. In the past, I would do like create like a whole object inside of this one here, but this, you don't need to do that. You know, it's like you can just create a disc in here, because this whole area here, the transition between this is going to be a transparency map. So you're never going to see the edge of the iris like this disc in here. You're probably going to see a little bit around here. So it's important to have it fairly close, you know, it's like to the surface. But again, that's not the point today. The point today is just measurement and distance and rotation. We're going to be talking about the other stuff like later. So again, the eyeball, 24. And then 12 for the iris. In the case of this little guy, I started modeling the day before yesterday. I actually opted to have like 20 instead of 24, just to have the eyeball slightly smaller than an average adult eyeball. And then the distance between the pupils is 63 here, but that's after the rotation, right? If I rotate this back, I'm probably gonna have like this distance reduced. It's gonna be smaller than what I have at this point. So first you do the rotation, and then you measure the distance between them, and then you should have about 63 between them. And then you see the distance that we have between the eyeballs in here, right? And that's the thing that I was talking about when you do like a drawing, and you're figuring out the proportions of the face, right? Normally, what we do is just like from corner to corner of the eye. So basically, like from here, from this corner here to this corner, you are measuring basically like, actually not this corner, it's more like around here, which is like includes the caruncula, right? So basically like you're gonna have like one eye, and then if you measure this again from this spot all the way to here, this middle area is gonna be the space of another eye, basically. But by eye, we are considering like the corners of them, right? But if you look internally, considering that the caruncula is covering a good chunk of this area here, right? It's not quite like three eyeballs, for example. It's a little bit more spread out. So you have a space between the eyeballs in here. If you measure this with my current scene, let's just see that out of curiosity here. I have a distance of approximately 6.3 millimeters, basically. So a little bit more than half centimeter, right, between the eyeballs themselves. And then obviously, when you add the carunculus, then you're gonna get like, it's like all the way to the corner and the internal corner as well. Then you probably, when you do the drawing, you're definitely gonna get like the 3-eye distance when you draw it. So we're gonna keep this in mind. If you're using like, if you're modeling an adult, so you can use the same measurements. If you're modeling a kid, then you're gonna have to go to something more like you know, the article mentions in here, right? Kids like between 43 and 58, right? So it's going to be the distance between the pupils, right? So consider that if you're doing that. In my case here, it's kind of like a combination, right? Is someone with a condition, and I don't know exactly what happens to the distance between the eyes, but I know that as little kids, they're fairly normal looking, and then early on, they start aging very fast, right? There's something that happens to the cells that make them age super fast. So in this case here, I'm gonna leave a little bit more open, and I'm gonna try to base more like on what I'm seeing visually, and then try to incorporate that, right? So now that we have this information in mind about the size of the eyeballs and the distance and the rotation between them, let's open the scene we had before, which was, let's go back here, Sammy, and then let's open the scenes. I think that's the scaled up. That's the latest one we saved yesterday. Let's not save this one. And then this is the model before we did the updates yesterday, right? Like before we sculpted some more. So let's just bring this one from yesterday. And I have like 647,000 polys at this point. Is that the Dynameshed version, very simplified, right? That I just like subdivided a couple of times. So for Arnold, it's not a big problem to get something, you know, around 600,000, even higher than that. I mean, Arnold's fine rendering stuff at high resolution. So I'm gonna just export this one the way it is. You're gonna be playing with some renders, which is always exciting. So I'm just gonna do like a semi-sketch 2 in here. Not gonna be mentioning that's scaled up now. And then I'm gonna do the same for the eyeballs, just to make sure they are the same. Paragraph 2. Now that my Maya got screwed, right? Like the preferences are screwed up, I'm gonna have to do that thing again, which is the import. Click the option box in here, and then make sure that your OBJ is set to single in here, which is not. I'm gonna have to do everything again. And then I'm gonna just import my OBJ. You know, no matter how many times I teach those classes, there is always some bug that's gonna happen, something that's gonna screw up the whole thing. It's rare that goes like completely smooth, you know. It's amazing to me that it happens. It's like completely weird stuff sometimes. Let's do import and then sketch 2. So we have the new guy in here with the eyeballs, right? And now it's the proportion should be fairly correct. If I want to measure this just to make sure, since I grew the size of his cranium, I might have to adjust a little bit. So let's just see my units here. Settings. So in let's do inches. And I have 6 around here, but my 6 is actually, if I move this from chin to the top of the head now is a little bit higher in there. So I think what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna group it. So I can just select all the objects, Control G, and I can just do a center. So I'm gonna just center my pivot, and I'm gonna just scale it down a little bit. I wanna make sure that it's a little bit closer to the, oops, a little bit closer to the proportion I need, which is like 6 inches, right? From top to chin. Let's go this way. Let's go from the side. Maybe it's easier to see right there. So yeah, it's fairly close to 6 now. So I rescale things. So since I did this, before I do anything else, let me just freeze, transform, and then I'm gonna export this again. Just make sure I have like it's important to have your scene, like your Maya scene and your ZBrush synchronized at all times. Otherwise it becomes a mess, you know? It's like you start working a scale and then the other scale in another software. And especially in production, man, this is like a recipe for disaster. So it takes a little time to just like make sure things are good, but it's important to, yeah, to have everything the way you should. So I reference it 3. So now this one is good here. Let me just do that again here in ZBrush. Make sure that I have the latest. So sketch 3. Rescale a little bit. This one, eyeballs, right? The eye reference 3. So we're now back in the game. So that should be my scene from now on. And I don't think I'm gonna grow his head much more at this point. So it should be good for now. Even if I grow a little bit, it should be good. But I think it's a better proportion. So now that we have the scene in here, we can get rid of, let's just, oops, not this one. Let's get this guy. Let's get rid of the locators in here. They need to measure. I'm just gonna hide them for now. And then let's bring some, let's do some lighting here. So the first thing here in Arnold, when you open the open Arnold render view in here, which is the one we're gonna be using, by default, it's gonna render like with the perspective camera or whatever camera you have created here. You know, it's like, so if you create a new camera, for example, panels, perspective, new, and you open a new Arnold render view, it's gonna open with that view that you have, like the active one. But at any time, you can actually switch in here if you have multiple ones. So if I have like perspective new, for example, now I have a different camera, it's perspective 1. Let's see. Yeah, it just populated. Oh, I have to do it again, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, now it's like perspective shape 1 in there. It's funny that doesn't update like in real time, which is stupid. But now it's there. So that's perspective 1 now. I like to have like different cameras. Sometimes like there's some bugs that happen. You have a little backup. You can actually copy the animation from one to another when I have like a duplicate, you know. So in this case here, the first thing I'm gonna do, let's talk a little bit about the view in here and how the camera is set up. So to have access to all the camera stuff, like all the properties, the best way to do that, you go to view in here and you just click select camera, right? And then if you press Control A for attributes, now this window is gonna pop in here, and then you can control like the focal length and everything, right? So since I'm gonna be doing a portrait that's probably like from head to chest or something like that, I can actually go like to an 85 here. And if it's too much, if it's too flat, I can kind of like put like between maybe 70 and 85, something like that. And then I'm gonna make sure that I have my resolution set here in the preferences. It's 9, see, it's like, it's not the one that I set up before because of my, the problem with the, you know, resetting the whole Maya thing. So I'm just gonna do this again. Sammy, let's do 8. And then I'm gonna put this one as name, number, and extension. I'm going fast here just because I already spoke about this stuff, so I don't torture you guys doing everything again. So I'm gonna just gonna do everything fast. If you have any question, like in the first lesson, we have that stuff. And I'm gonna crank this one to 6. The filter, I'm gonna put the 1.6. Ray depth, I'm gonna include a little bit more in here. Advanced, I'm not gonna use the auto bump for now. And textures, I'm gonna turn off those two. System, I'm gonna put 24 for my bucket size and keep everything CPU, not GPU. And that's it for now. So for this, I'm gonna just make sure that I have my progressive here so you can see the render results a little bit faster. And then, so that's basically it for the settings, just like recapping what we did before. So for the camera, the other two things I'm gonna do, you notice that when I set the resolution in here to 900 by 900, nothing happened in here. But if I go to view, if I go to camera settings and I turn on resolution gate, so let me just dock this. If you click this little bar, you can dock it. So if you click resolution gate, now it's gonna show you the square, that's basically your 900 by 900, right? So I can actually grow it. So if I have like shoulders and head, that's probably gonna be around here for the portrait, right? Depending on the angle I'm gonna be rendering, it's gonna be like more 3/4, whatever it is, right? But it's a good angle, and his head is flat enough, but it's not super flat. So it's kind of good, you know. If I want flatter, obviously I can crank this on to 100 here, even more. If you put 200, it's gonna get like flatter and flatter, right? And if you put like some small number, obviously it's gonna get like very distorted. So I actually like the 135 for portraits. I have a prime lens that's 135. That creates a flatness, but without being too aggressive, especially for this distance. So maybe I'm gonna be playing around like 85 and 135, maybe finding like 100, you know, something like that as a happy medium. So now I have like the resolution gate, so I can see exactly what's going to be rendered is just inside of this square. And I can create my first keyframe, right? Why we're going to be doing keyframes? Because if I want to do like multiple renders of different angles, I want to make sure that everything is saved automatically for you. For me, you know, it's like if I go to sleep, I can just tell Maya to just like render all those keyframes, so I don't need to, you know, do anything like manually. So I'm just going to go to View, select Camera, and then if you press S like Sam, you're going to notice like there's a little red dot in there. So if I do any movement now, if I go back to the keyframe, right, it's kind of like locks back to that. So that's going to be my first keyframe. I can just reduce this. Let's do like a 15 here for the limit. So I can actually have access to this a little bit faster for the keyframes. So for the second frame, I can do like a, let's say like a little bit more of a, like 3/4 from below like that. And again, I'm going to select camera and then press S. So I have my second keyframe. And this one I can do like a profile, full profile view like that, even more like close up like that. And do another one. One thing you can do as well, we can use this view chart in here. And this is cool because it shows you like the center and some diagonals as well. So you can play with the composition, right? Like I can actually put this diagonal right against his ear, right there. And then this one right against his eye. So I get the nice little, you know, composition. This one right in the middle here towards his neck. So it's a good position. So I can actually do like again and just override that. So sometimes I use the view chart just to, you know, help me to compose things. I wish Maya had something like a law of thirds, right? Like that's kind of like splitting thirds. That would be cool too. That's basically what I do in using Lightroom to help with the composition as well. Yeah, so now I have my 3 keyframes. I can actually match that by going to the preferences in here, the render settings, and then I can just match that around here. So the end keyframe is going to be number 3. So it starts at 1, goes until 3. So now that we have this 3 keyframe set and those 3 frames matching here, first off, let me just save this before any crazy crash happens, right? We don't want that for sure. And so now how you render like sequences. In the past, it would be a pain in the butt. It would be like the batch render you had to use. But now for a couple of versions now, like you have like access to a better solution, which is like under rendering here. If you go to the drop down, go to rendering. If you go to render, you can go to render sequence. So now you cannot, you know, you don't need to use that batch render. It was pretty crappy. So you just click like render sequence. And the only thing you're gonna have to pay attention here is that your camera name, perspective 1 in there, is actually matching here, right? So by default, it would be perspective. But in this case, since I'm using a copy of that perspective and it's named perspective 1, just make sure you have that matched. And then another thing you can do, you can click this button here that says add to render view. What's gonna happen is that every time you render a frame, it's gonna render the frame and automatically add it to, let me just show you here. Let's get this, just reduce it a little bit. Just click this option box in there. And let's see, view, POVs, test render. Yeah, the thing that sucks is that pixel information, 3D manipulation, show render tiles. This one we're gonna need. Pixel information we don't need right now. But basically like the way it works, every time you render something, you can actually do this. You go to render, view, and you say store snapshot. So every time you store a snapshot, it creates like a little bar in here, a slide bar. So if you have that option set right here in the render sequence to add to render view, that's gonna do it automatically for you. So at the end of the day, you know, it's like if you render a sequence here like of 10 images, 10 keyframes, and you check this in the morning after a night of sleep, you know, it's like you're gonna see there's like 10 images stored in here. So you can scrub through them and see all the images stored. The thing that's gonna happen as well is that for this renders here, Maya by default is gonna be using, instead of like the Arnold render view, it's gonna be using its own Maya render view. So it's gonna be slightly different from this, but it's basically the same thing. You're gonna see the images stored in there and everything. So let's talk about lighting for a little bit. So if you go to Arnold render view, like we had just now, let's just keep it open for a little bit. You're gonna see there's a bunch of different things here. And one of them is the lights in here, and then there are shaders and all that stuff. We talked about utilities for the TX manager the other day. For the most part, we're gonna be using just lights and the Arnold render view from this menu. So for the lights, just like in any other software, the area light's gonna be one of the most used, right? If you're trying to recreate like the ambient of a studio lighting, you're gonna be using area lights. And for something more realistic with realistic reflections and everything, you're gonna be using a sky dome light with an HDRI map plugged to it. So let's talk about both of them. So the area light first, if we click on it, you're gonna get that little square in there. And the area lights are very cool for a lot of things you can do with it. But one thing that's a little sucky is that area lights are not visible lights. Basically, like there's no way for you to turn on the visibility of it as you have, for example, with the HDRI, like a dome light or even like a mesh light. So for that reason, if you don't have visibility in the light, the caustics are not calculated correctly. So a lot of times, instead of using like a regular area light, I'd rather just create like a plane and then transform that plane into an object light, which is right here. So basically, like the way you do this, you can do very fast here. Create polygon primitives. You can do like a plane, right? So you have this plane right there. And you can just tell Maya or Arnold to go and say like lights, and then you say mesh light. So now you're gonna have it changed the color. Now it's like it's like reddish, right? So if you do this, now this plane is actually emitting light, right? Now the difference is this, look. You see like there's a button that says light visible, and this one doesn't have it, right? The area light doesn't have it. So when you're trying to calculate the caustics correctly, you're gonna need any type of light that can be visible. So in this case here, I'm gonna be using this one with the light visible if I wanna create later on nice caustics for the irises, for example, right? For the cornea area. And then also the HDRI is gonna do that automatically. I can do one here, for example, like Arnold Light Sky Dome. And you see there is a, where is it? Actually, it doesn't have it here, but it's actually visible by default, right? Like it's a visible light. This one definitely going to create a nice caustic effects as well. And it's going to be from all sides, right? Like from any place that it finds light in the dome. But for now, let's just focus on the simple stuff. Let's just hide this one for now. Let's focus on the area light, which is great. Other than the for caustic stuff, it works fine. So if you try to do a first render with the default stuff, you're going to see the light is very, very faint. It's very, very, the intensity is not great at all. So right now it's rendering and you cannot see anything, right? So there are a couple of things you can do here to make sure that it's rendering. And one of them, for example, you can change this setting here that says normalize. You can just turn it off. And I'm going to tell you what happens with it. So you're gonna see the image is already showing something there. And when I turn it off or on, it disappears. The difference here is this. So check this out. If I have it off, I have like this area light in a certain size, right? So if I make it smaller, look at the intensity of the light. It's gonna get smaller and smaller as well, right? If I get bigger, so the intensity gets bigger as well. So it's dependent on the size of the light source, right? Once you have like a value in here established, for example, intensity is 1, I can crank like to 2, for example, right? Once that's established, it's going to be dependent on the size of the light source. But if you have the normalize on, what's going to happen is that you're going to use like, you can keep like at 1 here, and you can crank the exposure, let's say 12 to start with. But look what's going to happen now. I can go and I can find what's the perfect illumination for my character. And then if I make it smaller, you're going to see that the shadows are changing from softer because you have like a broad area that's being, you know, it's like the light's coming from all those corners in here, right? For the entire thing, the area is very big, so it becomes very diffuse. And if it goes smaller and smaller, I think the exposure is a little high. Let's do 11 here. If it goes smaller and smaller, then you can get a light that creates like a very harsh shadows, right? Like just kind of like a sunlight, for example, you would have like a very tiny source like that, right? You're gonna get like some that looks very much more dramatic, right? So the cool thing about this is that if you use the normalize, then you can actually set up like the perfect amount of light you want your object to have, and you can just play with the size of it to see how diffuse you want the shadows to be. You know, it's like if you see like those portraits done in a studio lighting, the whole objective of using an area light is to simulate a light that comes from a window, right? It's an artificial window. So they normally put this on the side, you know, it's like a little bit of to the side, so you can have like a simulation of a window. So let's do this just to check what happens here. If you put the light a little bit more straight, you can put a little bit of an angle like that, and then bring to the side, for example, around here, and then put it, let's do something like this. And we can make like really look like a window by growing it quite a bit. Let's do like a bigger size like that. And now we can just have to set up in a way that the amount of light that's being produced kind of like matches, you know, it's like what would come from an actual window. So you can actually do like a 12 here, even like a 13. Let's see if it's too much, right? And then this is the type of lighting that you can get like a nice mood light, you know, it's like if you do something a little bit more from the side like that. Once you have the subsurface scattering, right, and you start seeing a little bit more of that. And then obviously, now that everything is set, you can actually start playing with the size of it to get a little harsher with the shadows, or a little bit more broad with the shadows like that, to look more natural, right? It's just like if you had like an artificial window in there, like a big window, right? Just like illuminating the whole side of the face. So that's basically like the main settings for the area light. There are things I play with. For example, the samples, I normally add more than one. So let's do like 2 or 3. So let's do 3 in here, so you can get a little crisper, not so noisy. And then there's a visibility here, which I don't think in this case here it works the same. I think I did this test before, although it looks like it's a visible light. I don't think it actually helps with the caustics, but I might be wrong. I might be wrong. Maybe I have to do the test again. In the past, I think I tried. I know if it was an older version, it didn't work for caustics, so that's why I was using other sources. But maybe now that he has that, maybe it's actually creating the caustics. I can do a test later. And then this is very important, for example, for creative lighting. For any light you get, you create with Arnold, including like the dome light for the HDRI, you can actually maintain the full visibility, or you can just like reduce the visibility to nothing. And in that case, you only get the reflections and everything, but you don't get like the background, right? So sometimes what you want to do is like cheat in a way, you know, it's like be more creative. So for example, you want the reflections to come from a certain HDRI, and then the lighting itself comes from a similar HDRI, but not necessarily with the exact same lighting. So as long as they are kind of like similar in the positioning and everything, it works, you know. Obviously, you're not going to use like two completely different HDRIs. Then it's not going to make sense, like the reflections with the lighting. But you can use creatively, you know, it's like just make it visible or invisible here. So now that we put one area light in here, let's do another one. Let's create another one. So we're going to do the same area light in here. You can duplicate if you want to. We're going to do by hand here. And then you can actually play with coloring and all that stuff. Let's just do like a bounce light in here. So we have like the main window in there. I'm going to make a little bit smaller, more from the side in here. Something like that. And I'm going to also turn on, increase the exposure here. So instead of like going like full on 12 like I did before, right? I can have a little bit less than that. Let's do 8. maybe 9. So there's a nice bounce light that's coming out. And it started to look a little bit more kind of like a physical object, right? So it's slightly more realistic than what we had before. And then you can be creative with the coloring as well. So for example, like a common thing is to use a little bit more warmth, right? Like if you have like a, depending on the time of the day, you're gonna get more warmth, and then depending on the season as well, if it's snowing outside, you're probably gonna get like a very bluish kind of type of color, and that can be controlled right here. You have this use color temperature, so you see it's at 6,500 Kelvin right now. If I crank to 9,000, for example, that's a bluish light, kind of similar to like a snowy day, something like that, right? If you go down to 3,000, for example, that's going to be like a condensate light, right? You're going to get a very yellowish light in there. So it's kind of cool to play this way because you can get like a very realistic, you know, it's like based on physical attributes, right? So if I want to do something that's kind of like, let's say like at 5,000, should be slightly warm, not by much. Around 6,000 to 7,000 should be more like a daylight kind of setting. I would say more like probably 7,000 in this case, kind of like more white, right? But around 5,000, maybe 5,500, something like that. Get a little bit of warmth in there. And then for this bounce light here, you can play and you can do like a cool version of it. You can do like the 9,000 that I had before. So now you have a little bit of a bluish light combined with a little bit more warm light, right? So that's basically like the gist of playing with area lights. Studio lighting is something it's very worth like researching. You know, there are people like photograph just with one single source of light. For portraits, a lot of people use the 3-point light, which is basically like they have the fill, right? Which, you know, the fill like the main light, which is the key. They have a fill light, and sometimes they have a hair light, you know, it's like something that they put from the top, or for example, backlight to get some of the subsurface scattering to show in our characters is always cool. Speaking about subsurface scattering, we can do a little play with that as well. So let's just do this. Let's just make sure that I have the character a little bit more close up like that. And I'm just gonna put it back right here. I'm gonna zoom out. So that's the character right there. I'm gonna just pause it for a second. And let's play with the shader very quickly here, because what I wanna do for you guys is just like, make sure you can put together a little scene and start doing some renders from the get-go, from the beginning. So you can actually see the model as a physical object and start analyzing the surface, you know, it's like, so you can catch like problems with the forms very early on. So, so let's do a little, just playing with the shaders right now. Don't worry too much about getting the shader to look realistic at this point, because like I said before, I'm gonna open up the entire thing. So there's like no secret. Open the whole shader network for you guys, and you're gonna have the access to the entire thing. But for now, we're just like playing around. So first thing I click is this little sphere in here, which is gonna open the hypershade, right? And then I can go to my shaders in here under Arnold, right? Arnold shader. And then Arnold has this shader that's called like it's kind of like a Uber shader, right? It has all the components to create all kinds of different materials. It's called AI Standard Surface. So if you click that one, you're gonna notice that there is a button here that says presets. And here you can find a lot of stuff that's pre-programmed for you, right? You can have, for example, diamond, if you wanna do like diamonds, right? You can just click like replace completely, or just blend with the previous material. You have this option to do like a part one thing, part another thing. So for example, you can mix gold and glass by blending like 50% of each one, right? But in this case here, if you want a pure color, you can just go straight here and say like skin, okay, replace to the entire thing with that, right? And then it creates that. But I don't like the settings quite a lot the way like they have in here. So if I click like skin, for example, it shows that. And there are a couple of things here I don't like, so I changed. I normally start from scratch, but as a quick start, maybe you can try to do that. You know, it's like so AI standard surface. Let's see, preset. I just did it, just gonna do it again. Let's do skin, replace. And I'm gonna show you some of the presets, the settings in here. And one of them is around, let's say, subsurface. You see, the scale is completely wrong at this point because they have no idea what's the scale of the character we're using here, right? We are trying to use real world scale. Oh, this happens as well. So at this point here, I don't have this assigned, right? This is still the default shader that's assigned. So I'm just gonna pause it here. I'm gonna click my model, go back to my hypershade, and there are many different ways you can actually middle click and just drag and drop to your model to assign the shader, or you can just like right click around here at the top and say assign material to viewport selection. So now it's assigned. So every time I click the model now, I'm gonna have access to this AI standard surface, which I can rename here. I can just put like skin temp, something like that, right? So now it's assigned. So let's see what's gonna do. The scale is very huge, so it's gonna look like a candle probably. Yep, looks pretty scattery, right? Now for the characters I normally render, I use the scale of 0.115 to 135, something like that. Sometimes a little bit bigger, but I'm gonna keep around, let's do like 130 right there. And then there's a difference here as well. So first it's gonna start looking a little bit more natural here. It's a little bit scattery still. Let's change from random walk to random walk 2, which should change the algorithm. And look at the difference here. Let's just do a comparison, for example, in this area here at the nose. So we can just do a comparison by doing this. We can go to view, story snapshot. So we have this one in there. Let's switch to random walk. That's the difference right there. And then let's do the last one. Let's do a diffusion in here. And then let's render again. So now we have, like the random walk 2, random walk, and then diffusion. Diffusion and random walk 2 are more similar, right? Like this one spreads in a funny way, like the old random walk. So random walk 2 is a much more natural look. It actually adds a little bit more of this green tint, and that's due to some saturation in the color of the radius. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So at this point, we are just using the preset that came with Arnold, which is, I said I don't like it very much. So I'm just going to go back to random walk 2, right, which creates this result in there. And then let's play with the radius. One thing I want to point is this. If you go to your manual, I pointed you guys the other day to the Arnold manual online. You're going to see, for example, if you go to your shaders, there's a surface, and then there's standard surface, right? And then you're gonna get a bunch of things in there. Let's see. Actually, let's go to the subsurface right here. So under standard surface, go to subsurface. And then there's a way to create like the color that Arnold uses. It's very peculiar, which is basically like, instead of using like multiple layers to generate like the, it's like the epidermis and, it's like subdermal tissues and everything like in different layers. He actually uses the colors to create those layers. So here it says this: when rendering skin, you should use a value of 1, 0.35, and 0.2, indicating the red should scatter deepest, the green and blue is less. So basically, like, he creates like 3 layers by using the colors. So red, green, and blue, right? So this is the deepest scattering. So like for example, like if you're doing backlighting to illuminate like the eye, the ears, right? You're gonna get like some deep scatter. And then this is a little bit more of the shallow tissue, right? So 1, 0.35, and 0.2. But even that, if I do it here, let's do RGB. So 1, so they recommend to do like 1, 0.35, 0.2, right? So you got a little bit reddish in there. So if I do this again, it gets a little bit weird, it's like it's a little bit too much. So what I try to do, and to prevent like the green tint that happens in there, is to actually desaturate things a little bit. So let's get this one down. So for example, like let's try a 0.8 in here. But again, like I'm just like, this is just like to play with. I'm gonna give you all those values, so don't worry about like copying anything at this point. It's just to show you how it works. So for example, the green here, if I play with it, you're gonna see it's starting to lose and to gain more of that tint of the epidermis, right? Like this green is introduced by the fat tissues underneath the skin, right? And then you're gonna get like this one, right? Gets a little bit more on the purple side of things. So I'm gonna keep this one at 0.8. So I desaturated it. This one here, I'm gonna do let's try 0.4 and 0.2 like we had before. So the thing is, like, I'm using RGB here. If I switch to HSV, you're gonna see that around here, the saturation is at 0.750. And that causes a lot of green tint sometimes, you know? So if you switch back to HSV, and you can keep this value here underneath 0.5, you should be good to go. I think the green is gonna go away for the most part. So I can do like 0.480. So first I adjusted the RGB values, right? Like to 0.8 and then 0.4 and 0.2. And then now I'm actually going back like to HSV and then just desaturating things a little bit more. And you can see like there's a lot of noise happening there. And that's due to the low samples that we have at this point. We have 6, 2, and 2. If I increase this to 3, 3, 3, for example, and put 8 in here. So let's see if that resolves a little bit better. And also what's gonna happen here is that this is actually doing a progressive render. So if I want a full render that looks a little bit more interesting, let's do like that without the progressive render. And let's see if it calculates with a little bit more of a smooth result. Yeah, it's a little bit better, but still, I mean, like there's a lot to do with the lighting, the number of samples we have for the lighting. So all this stuff we're gonna be tweaking eventually. So right now, it's a little bit better than it was before, right? So it's not like that the super red anymore. So let's just do this. So just like I said before, like something for you guys to play with, just to see your model as a physical model with a little bit of subsurface scattering, just to, you know, for the kick of it. And then let's just tweak this a little bit, put like some backlight so you can see the ears in there. And then we can move on to HDRIs, which is like, it's always like the best way to render to make sure that the character looks like in place, right? Like into the environment and everything. So you see like the render here goes a little bit slower now, right? Because I increased the samples in here and the main anti-alias multiplier. So this is a multiplier. So if you increase both this one and those numbers, it increases the render time by a lot. So sometimes you can just keep those ones low and just play with the first one. Or sometimes it's a compromise, you know, it's like you just increase a little bit like 3 like that, and then you don't need to go all the way higher than 12 or 14 for the final renders. And also, like I said before, like if you have a source of light that's pretty big, sometimes it's better if you can actually, let's just do a test here. Let's keep at 2. Just doing 2 and 7 like that. Let's go back to the nose area. Let's render just that area and just save it. You see there's a lot of noise in there. Story snapshot. So let's do one thing here. Let's play with those lights in order to preserve like that the perspective without messing with it, right? I'm just like switching camera here, going to the other camera. So I can go in another angle and just select those things a little bit more easily. So I'm just gonna click here and the samples are gonna increase. Let's do like 16 here. And then let's do another 16. Oh, I have to actually pause it in there. Let's do another 16 here. Let's see if it resolves a little bit better. It's definitely taking longer now. Still has plenty of noise. So yeah, in this case here, the light is not going to be the solution. It's going to be probably the anti-alias are going to have to crank quite a bit to resolve that. You know, it's like, because it's definitely not doing much difference in here. the samples are not affecting at all. So that means like it's not coming from the light. It's coming definitely from the anti-alias. So in that case, yes, if you have something that's very dramatic, like a super intense light, you're definitely gonna need to increase more samples in here. So let's keep this one low. Let's do 4 in here so it's faster to render. And then let's go back and let's not, you know, it's like increase too much here because otherwise it's gonna be too slow to demonstrate for you guys. But just so you know, if you wanna like super smooth results for the final renders and everything, you better, you know, crank this camera anti-alias here for a little bit more than what I have. So let's add another lighting here, which is gonna be a backlight just for the ears. So the same thing, let's do a Arnold light, area light, and just grow it, something like that. Let's flip it around. This is pointing the direction, right? Like you can see it's coming from this little line points the direction. So let's do a little bigger than that. Again, like if I render, it's not gonna show anything different at this point because it's it normalizes on, right? And the intensity is too small. So let's increase this one as well to 12. Now I got more of the backlight happening there. I can turn it a little bit more bluish for, you know, for effect. Let's do a 9,000 here. You can go even higher than this. Let's do a 12,000, super blue. And now we're gonna be able to see a little bit more of the subsurface coming through the ear. Let's just like zoom in. Actually, let's just do let's turn on the progressive here so it's faster. It's gonna be noisier, but at least it's faster. And just like get just this area right here to render a little bit faster. So we get that nice little balance in there. And that's using like 0.13 for the scatter, right? Like for the scale in there. So that should be the ballpark that should work overall for the character. But obviously, they're going to be giving you all the small details in there for the shader. So we should get something much more realistic than this silicone mask that we have at this point. And the cool thing now is that if you have like a simple lighting setup like this, right, like just a 3-point light, now you can actually start analyzing the forms and figuring out everything that's needed for the character to, you know, to improve. And then you can, you know, rotate around and you start like playing with you know, like seeing what's missing, you know, it's like comparing to the references. And then it's a more like apples to apples, you know, it's like if you can try, for example, to find a picture that has either like a studio lighting or like a one point light or something like that, that you can try to match the reference to your render. It's always easier to actually match those forms, you know, it's like comparing a similar lighting setup to your own and then, you know, get things a little bit closer faster. So let's just pause this one for a second. And now this is basically like the gist of working with area lights. It's a simple process, right? Like just add them, change the colors, intensity, choose if you want to do like with normalize or not. Without normalize, basically like the amount of light is dependent of the scale of the light. With the normalize on, it's always the same intensity. It just changes the how the light spreads within the same intensity, which is pretty cool, like for creative lighting. So now let's just hide those lights. So we have all of them here. I can actually group, so Control G, and I can just name it area lights, something like that. So you just don't get lost. And then let's play with a different type of light, you know, which is going to be an HDRI. So if I try to render now, it's going to be black, right? No lights at all. So let's just do Arnold lights, sky dome light. And by default, it has nothing assigned to it. So it's just like white, right? So if you try to render, it's pretty boring like that. It's just like a global light, right? Back in the day when I used Maya, there was like there were scripts that would create a dome of lights based on an image to simulate an HDRI. That's how old I am. It's kind of like Maya 1.1 or Maya 1. What's that, like Maya 2, something like that. Someone came with the script, which basically like it would look for sample the colors in a texture, for example, like a TIFF assigned to a globe. And then you would pick that color and then create a light and assign that same color to the light. So at the end of the day, we'd have like this dome of lights to simulate a global light like this. It was pretty much like a big cheat. We didn't have access to HDRIs at that point. But now we have, so we're gonna be playing with it. So the best place to search for them, it's always a place called HDR Haven, sorry, HDR Haven. Let's do it like that. Yeah, it's actually HDRI Haven. Okay, HDRI Haven. And so I have no affiliation with those guys again, but I encourage you guys, if you can, to contribute. They have like this Patreon, and I believe I paid like, I think it was like $3 or something like that. And you don't need to pay every month. You can pay just like a small contribution. And then they give you access to a Google Drive. And in this Google Drive, you have access to all the HDRIs they have, you know? So it's pretty cool. Just check what are the conditions if they change anything. But in the past, it was just like you give a few bucks and would have access to the whole, you know, it's like a folder with all the HDRIs. So if you click in HDRI here, you're gonna have everything separated by, you know, it's like outdoors, indoors, skies, studio, all this stuff. There's all the themes in there, right? And obviously, I love the studio lighting. And the thing that's very deceiving is that sometimes you look at pictures like that, and it's like, oh man, this looks pretty crappy, you know? And I don't think it's gonna do like a good job rendering to create something more realistic. And the only way like to see what an HDRI map is doing is to actually render your character with it, you know? You're gonna be surprised. Sometimes you see something that looks very crappy, and then you render it's like, oh man, that looks really nice. So I would say like, go to this website and start downloading stuff. Everything is for free, so they don't charge anything. But again, like they ask you if you wanna contribute, right? And you pay a couple of bucks to help them out, and then you get access to a folder where you can just like download everything in a single scoop, which is really, really good. So the way it works is like, once you find one image you want to test, you can just click on it. And then if you scroll down, they're going to have multiple resolutions, 1K, 2K, 4K, 8K, and 16. And then those are some samples of renders done with this type of lighting, right? Which is really cool. And then later on here, you're going to see similar ones. So they're going to suggest some similar ones. So obviously those studio lightings are very cool. But the indoor stuff is like, there's a lot of very cool stuff, like especially this type of stuff, you know, those big garages and environments. Just look at the one single point of light and some indirect light is always preferable because you get some nice reflections with it. But I'm gonna be pointing you guys to a couple of my favorite ones. I can actually open one of my scenes like from the previous class, so I can show you like the type of lights that I have plugged in there. And I have them named, so it's gonna be easier for you to check it out. So let's just save this one. And I'm gonna open, let's open like a previous model here. Let's try this one. And I believe I have all the HDRIs in there. So let's try this. This is like a final model for the class I did in April. So you're gonna be able to see all the moving parts in there, but also to see like the HDRIs that I have plugged in there. I can actually export all those HDRIs and just bring it to his scene, which is gonna be easier for me than doing everything manually, but I can show you how to plug and all that stuff, obviously. So that's just like a bunch of hair in there, right? So that's she's like an albino model. And again, like I could not totally use her name or anything. Like the likeness is close, but it's not perfect because of that thing about copyright, right? Like, I mean, like if you're doing something like for profit, like those classes, right? Like I cannot simply use one-to-one likeness from anyone, right? But that's cool to just like see the model in there after all those months not opening it. That's basically what we're gonna be doing this class. You know, it's like adding all the peach fuzz and you know, it's like all this like nose hair and all that crap. Gonna be doing all that. But in this case here, the only thing I want is to actually check the name of those HDRIs. So I have those ones in here. and I have them named according to the name of the files. So I have like a small hangar. So if you go to like to here and you just to do like a search right here, so for the hangar, that you're gonna see there's the small hangar 2, small hangar 1. So it's slightly different, right? So basically, like I'm naming here, so for you guys to see what's the exactly what's the HDRI I'm using. So any of those with 4K in the name right here, that's gonna be the name of the files, right? And those are gonna be like my favorite ones. This is Studio Bass. Let me get this one as well. And this one I'm gonna rename. Let's just do this now. Let's do hangar. Let's see what's the name of the file here. So this is hangar 2. Just put it in here so we don't get confused. And this is Do Your Best. It's probably like I tested a bunch of them and I like this one better. Let's get this one named this way as well. So I'm gonna select all those guys. Let's see what the outdoors is. Outdoors is the stream, okay? Get this one. And off stoplight. I think this one is not, yeah, this one is from another package. It's from, I paid a couple of bucks like for a package that was from this guy, Max something. And he had some very nice HDRI, so I got like a bunch of them. So I'm just gonna go and get like those ones in here because they have the names and they are all from HDRI Haven. And I'm just gonna export the selection. Let's do as MB. Let's export to Sammy here. This scenes, so HDRIs, like that, MB. And then let's open Sammy again. Model 2, I believe. This one's just double check. Yes, that one. Just open it. Don't save. And then first I'm gonna show you how to create, how to plug the maps and everything. And then, where is it? You got screwed somehow? Man, I'm not trusting Maya these days, dude. Oh, there he is. That's so weird. Huh. Okay, well, anyway. So let's just do this. So I have let me just create it again. So go to Arnold, lights. I'm gonna create a sky dome light. And then under the preferences in here, let's look at what we need to do. So the resolution, the first thing you're gonna be doing is to match the resolution with the resolution of the HDRI itself. So if you downloaded a map in here and you download it in 8K, right? You're gonna download from there, 97 megabytes. Then you're gonna have to put 8K in there, which in 8K is basically like 8192 pixels and 4K 4096, right? All my maps, I only use 4Ks. I'm not using something for extreme large prints or anything. So I can just match that number in here. So 496, that's the first thing I'm gonna do. Samples are gonna increase a little bit, maybe like 3, something like that. And then how we plug the map. So for the map, we're only gonna click in the color in here. So click the color and you're gonna see something in here. So file. And a couple of things I'm gonna be doing now, and I do this for most of my textures. I turn off the filters because I don't want it to blur anything, right? The color space in here, it shows like aces. You see like the color space shows aces 2, 20, 65, 1, but you're gonna see something that's gonna happen here. Hopefully, if everything goes according to the plan. So the other thing you're gonna do is, so the first one, I changed the filter to off. And I'm gonna scroll down here to Arnold, and I'm gonna turn off the auto-generate TX texture, right? Because like I said, if you have more memory, you don't need that because you don't need the whole process to happen every single time you bring a new texture, right? But if you have problem with like small number of memory, like gigabytes you have for memory, then you can keep it on and then let Arnold to create those smaller files for you. So now we're gonna see something interesting here. Remember that we did that whole process of going to color management and creating those rules in here, right? So in theory, if I bring a HDRI map, if you match that extension in there, you should switch to utility linear sRGB automatically. So you see, oh man, don't crash. Please don't crash. Oh, you see, when I cancel, that message, that error message that I just got in there is the one that caused the whole folder to corrupt the last time. So I don't know what's going on with Maya, man, but that's not a good sign. Just canceling this whole thing. You see, it's gonna pop right here. Yeah, there's something funky in there, but I'm afraid that at this point here, I already corrupted my preferences folder again. But let's see, let's hope for the best. So let's go to the image file here, and I'm gonna click on it, and I'm gonna find, I have like a lot of those files downloaded. I have a folder here that's called HDRI collection, right? And I have a bunch of different ones in there. So all of those here, all downloaded from, you see like all of them have like 4K at the end. They're all downloaded from HDRI Haven. And in the spirit of just like testing things, you know, the thing that I'd like to do is, let's just get like, let's see, one of the modified here. Let's see, let's try Studio Small. Like, let's try this old bus depot in here. So I brought it, and you see that it switched automatically from ACES 2065 to utility linear sRGB. So that means that the rules we put in here, they are working. That means that every time you bring some texture, it's gonna convert for you automatically, right? According to those rules in there. So at this point here, I already converted, so it should be good to go. In case of displacement maps, for example, some people prefer to use like the raw. So basically, like if you go to utility raw, you can use for displacement maps. But it basically doesn't change. You know, it's like if you have linear sRGB, it works the same way. It's gonna work just fine. So that's basically what I use for HDRI. So at this point, it should be good to go. Let's just do a quick test in here. Let's see what happens. So the light looks a little strong. Let's see. One thing that happens sometimes with Arnold is that if you bring a new light, for example, you know, it's like I came from playing with area lights before and I switched to this one. So sometimes it gets a little confused. So just make sure that the light's correct. Let's do something here. I'm gonna store the snapshot just to compare later. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go to render and update full scene. So that should reload everything. Yeah, so that means like the light is correct. So let's see what's causing this light to look so blown up. Let's just like spin it around a little bit. Let's get maybe it's the angle that we have in there. So let's get perspective here. Let's pause it for a second. And let's just spin this around like that. Let's see what changes in there. Yeah, so we get it. It was pretty much like front light, so that's why it was causing that. And then obviously you can play with intensity here. You can actually colorize things a little bit. But at this point here is a matter of like finding what's the perfect angle, you know. Obviously, like at this point, we are kind of like just doing some research in here and seeing what looks better or not. Maybe you're gonna find out that an angle like this, it's gonna work better because you have like a side light and there, it adds a little bit of drama on that side, right? But basically, like, that's the way you plug the HDRI map. You know, it's like it's super simple. Now there are a couple of tweaks we can do. For example, this light here looks fairly warm in a certain way. So what you can do is just save this one for comparison again. You can click the HDRI, and you can go here and either you can plug like a corrective color correction node in between this one and the model, which I can show you when we start talking about the shaders. Or in this case, you can do, if you want to do like a hack job and just make a little bit more bluish, you can go to the color balancing here. And where you see color gain, you can add a little bit of blue tint in there. So you can go like click this white in here. And if I go towards blue, let's get all the way around here. Sometimes it gets a little funky. You can create, click this color management and check it. So it's easier to just go there and get the color you want. So if I go really blue, it's gonna look weird. So check this out. It's gonna look very, very bluish, right? But you can get a little bit of the tint, right? It looks a little bit less warm overall. So that's the original right here, right? And this is the one we're rendering right now. So sometimes I do that, you know. I tend to like scenes a little bit cooler because it helps with the skin, you know. It's like sometimes the skin looks a little bit more natural under like a cooler light for some reason. Yeah, it's kind of like a matter of like preference, yeah. But this is basically like what I do with my HDRIs, just do a few tests, you know. It's like plug them in there, play with exposure sometimes. But I would say like those ones from HDRI Haven, they come pretty well calibrated. But if you need to do anything, you can always like play with exposure in here, or you can go back to the main attributes in here, and then you have like the exposure. Where is it? Let's see. If I click that, simple exposures right here, right? So for example, like if I'm rendering something like that, I can crank the exposure like that, right? For the lighting itself. I can go back and underexpose the light. So you can actually do a few tweaks, you know, it's like to compensate if the light's too overexposed or something. But in general, sometimes I underexpose maybe like by half a point, something like that. But not by much, you know. It's like those ones, like I said, from HDRI Haven, they're pretty well calibrated, you know. It's like you can get some nice results kind of straight away. So this is the first one we plugged in there, just like the first HDRI. A few things you can do with HDRIs, obviously, you can cheat things, right? You can, if you're not planning to render, for example, like the background itself, let's say you can use this lighting setup, the HDRI, just to create the lighting, but you can put a plane right behind him, kind of like a curtain, right? And then in that case, it doesn't matter the angle of your HDRI, since it's not gonna be, you're not gonna be seeing it, you can do all kinds of cheats. So for example, you can go to here, and let's say you want this light a little bit higher, right? From here, you can look, the light's coming from that very distant point right there. And then you're getting a lot of backlight coming from all that those high windows in there. And this environment is pretty cool because it has like those high windows all the way across. You get some interesting reflections. But you can cheat that by simply doing something like this. You can just rotate the entire thing like that, right? And all of a sudden you get a different type of lighting. Again, like if you're doing something like you're not gonna be seeing the background, right? Like you can actually totally cheat it and find like an angle that actually creates an interesting reflection and lighting condition for you, right? So that's basically like the way you plug those things into HDRIs. So now let's import the other ones I had. Let's do a few tests in here. So if you go to import, let's import MB by a binary. And then let's get to the scenes, HDRIs. Let's hope that they all come connected. So there's this is the, I don't know how you spell it, or how you pronounce it, Chiara interior, something like that. So that's one of the maps. You can search all those names in here. You can search for them. The other thing I forgot to do is the namespace here. If you got something imported and you got some funky namespace, you can actually remove that. I think it's under Window. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it here. So Window, General Editors, and then Namespace Editor. So for example, you have HDRI here. You can just say delete and merge with the root. And now they all like remove that, the prefix in there. So the names are here. So Stream 4K, Small Hangar, Studio Small 2, Small Hangar 2, and then this one is Chiara Interior 4K. So this one is a cool one because it has that nice side light in there. This is the one I use to render my my character. This one here, right? So we got like a lot of those. Yeah, she was rendered with that environment, which is pretty nice, right? Like it has this nice side light in there. So this one is using this Chiara interior. I don't know how it's gonna work for Sammy, but we can try. So let's try to go to panel perspective 1. And let's compare this lighting here. Let's store for comparison. And let's render him again. So in his case, it's a little bit too, you know, it's like it's too spot on, right? Like it's hitting him straight on. So in her case, I had a similar lighting, but because of her angle is a little bit more like that, yeah, it's a little bit of more drama, right? Like the light coming from a window from the side, right? So that's like one of the environments in there. It's almost like at this point, I kind of see those characters as like silicon masks, you know, it's like it's just like no textures or anything. So it's just like looking for the feel of it overall. And another thing that I'm going to say is that not every day is a good day to work in our stuff, right? Sometimes, I mean, like I have a full-time job, so I work for ILM from 9 to 6 around that time. And tomorrow is going to start getting very tricky for me because my kid's going to have to study from home. So it's just like we are in the process of putting a little, you know, it's like desks for them and everything is setting up computers. So they're going to be doing, you know, the first grade and fourth grade from our home. So, you know, it's like, it's going to be very tough for me, like to run the class and do that with them in the morning and then work the rest of the day. But sometimes I'm probably going to be completely exhausted and I still going to try to do something because I don't believe in like waiting for inspiration, you know. You have to sit your butt and do the work. That's basically how it works. And sometimes if you're completely uninspired to do something that's more complex, for example, like doing a complex groom or something that takes like a lot of concentration, right? I would just do something like this, you know, it's like import a bunch of HDRIs, which is a simple thing to do. And then you start playing, doing renders like this, very relaxed, you know, it's like get a little juice on the side or a beer, whatever you want to do. And then like do a couple of renders, save them on the side. Let's do like store here and then keep switching them, you know, let's do like an outdoors lighting here and let's see what happens, for example. And then that way it's a way that you force yourself to keep being productive, you know. If it's an off day for you, do the simplest thing you can do, you know. It's like if it's like tweak a little bit of the UV maps, you do that. If it's just like playing with lighting, just do that. But just don't stop working on stuff because otherwise you get like in a lazy mode, you know. It's like, and all of a sudden like, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. And many times, you know, it's like I was completely uninspired and I just forced myself to start doing something. And I got excited doing the process, you know, forcing myself. I got excited and I ended up like producing something cool in that night. So the important thing is to keep yourself productive, you know. So that's this is like a outdoors lighting that's really cool. I did a couple of renders for, let's see, this guy here. Let's open. I ran this once and I liked the results back in the day when I did it. See if I can find while it renders. Image. I have actually a mosaic somewhere. Actually, a bunch of those here. Let's see. Where did I save it? Yeah, so basically like those ones here. So this is a lighting setup, like I think it's I don't know if it's the bus one, probably another one. I think I have saved it somewhere. So I did a render test with this guy back in the day like that. And then I switched the lighting and then I switched again. This is that bus depot that I was just working with a few minutes ago. And then another one, this is the same one. You can see like by the trees in there, it's the same lighting, probably some color correction in there and everything. So this is very cool, you know, it's like to just like go through those things and just do like a lot of tests to see what works best, you know. This one is the same thing, like I said before, like cheating, right? Like putting a background in there and then seeing what happens. For example, if I use this lighting here with the red background and I got something like that, right? And then some more natural, a little bit more diffuse, and then a little bit more, you know, it's like a more dramatic. So, you know, it's like a bunch of different tests until you get something that you actually like at the end, you know. So it's important, like this step, like it doesn't take a lot of work. It's just a matter of like plugging a bunch of maps and seeing how they work, right? Sometimes you're gonna see that some of them are gonna be a little bit too extreme, and then you're gonna have to tweak, like I said, like underexposed by half a point or something like that. But overall, it's very cool test, you know, it's like to keep yourself busy. So now I can just store a bunch of those and I can switch between them. I can make sure that I have, like, I test everything in a certain order so I know what the correspondence is, right? But obviously, like with the background, there is an indication. It's easy to see what's the lighting setup you have. So the stream is pretty cool for outdoor stuff. And then the hangar, that's one of my favorites too. Let's try the studio lighting. Did I get studio? Yeah, this one, studio small. So this is one of those environments that when I look at first, like to the HDRI itself, I was like, nah, that doesn't look like it's gonna create anything too interesting, right? It has a bunch of lights like that. It's just like, it didn't seem very interesting. And when I render, I was actually pretty surprised. But what happens as well is that depending on the character, sometimes it works better for a certain type of skin, or, you know, it's like sometimes it doesn't work very well for another. So it's a matter of like really testing them, you know. So let's see how this one turns out here. See, it's a little bit too much, too frontal, I would say, in here. And because of our shader, it doesn't have anything interesting going on yet. We don't have any breakup in the surface. So you're gonna get those plastic areas here, but probably gonna be much better once you have more detail in the skin, you know. But in this case here, I can simply start rotating the HDRI and see if I can find like an angle that looks a little bit better for my character here. So let's see, maybe a little bit slow in there. So let's try to rotate. Let's try from this angle here. And let's just isolate just part of his face around here. Goes a little bit faster. Yeah, the cool thing is that, you know, it's like if you keep spinning those HDRIs, eventually you get like an angle that looks really nice. And the thing is, like, you cannot trust that that's the angle you're gonna be using at all, right? Like sometimes, like I said, like from a certain angle, the light looks like crap. But then if you find that dramatic angle, for example, let's switch like the camera in here again. Let's go from 1 to 2 to 3, right? You can end up like finding an angle that works very nicely. In this case here, the light is too frontal, so it doesn't look like very interesting. Lighting is also modeling, right? Like you have to be able to show the forms. That's why you use the 3-point light, to be able to hit from different angles and reveal the forms, so you can actually feel, you know, it's like what's you know, it's like concave and convex, right? But in this case here, it's a cool little lighting, you know, it's like just for a quick studio study like that. And one thing that you're gonna notice here, I did before, is that, you know, this angle here, it looks like the frame looks pretty good. But when I go to the frame number 2, now it looks a little small in there. And that's happening because when I set up this keyframe in here, I was using 85 millimeters, and then I switched to 100, right? So it kind of got a little shrunk in there. So I'm gonna just like reframe it a little bit. So I'm gonna bring it around here and just reframe it to conform to my 100 millimeters now, which is right there, focal length 100. I'm gonna just keyframe it again. And same for this guy here. Let's just keyframe around there. Same thing. And now we can actually switch, and it should do a little nice job. So for the camera, for the visibility of the light, right? So I have the light that's visible in there, but you have a creative way to actually hide it, which is this one here. So you can use the visibility and put like a very small number, for example, 0.2 in here. So you're gonna see a little bit of it, but it's starting to fade away. So let's do like 0.1. That shows that that light is very strong in there, right? 0.1. I still see it as 0.1. Let's try 0.02. Now it's starting to disappear. It's a very strong light. Man, that's strong. Because normally at this point here, the light is almost completely gone, you know? So the cool thing is that you can actually, like I said before, you can completely hide it, and you can have another HDRI that's completely visible, and that one is gonna be casting, for example, just the reflections. So it can, independently of the the HDRI you're using, each one of them you have control for the diffuse, specular, subsurface, and indirect light. So sometimes you don't want to create like any specular from an HDRI. So if I put 0 here, let's see what happens. It's eliminating the specular from the face, right? So we're gonna go back to 1. Let's do this with the diffusing here. The diffuse basically like the subsurface is basically the face itself, right? The diffuse is affecting just the eyes because they don't have any subsurface scattering. So if I do like 1, the eye is gonna show up again. And if I reduce the SSS itself, now the face should be gone, right? So that's a cool thing, like tricks you can do, you know, it's like for the HDRI to affect just certain parts of the model and not others. So you can actually use multiple sources and just see what fits better, you know, it's like you can use in a very creative way. Do this one, and then just like stop it. So that's the studio. And then we're gonna do, let's go to this, I think like I'm gonna let you guys play with them, you know, it's like I'm not gonna be demonstrating each one, just like maybe the last one here, this aircraft workshop. That's kind of cool one too. I would recommend to download those ones first, you know, and see which ones you like, and possibly like you guys gonna find some other one that I never tried that's gonna look much better for your character, you know. It's a matter of like clicking, you know, it's like you test something and then all of a sudden like, oh yeah, it clicks. It's kind of like, oh, it looks very nice. Yeah, this one is a little bit too soft. Let me see if I recognize this HDRI from another angle here. Oh yeah, yeah. This one is a very nice one, but you have to use from a certain angle. You have to, you know, it's like if you get the light a little bit more from the front. A bit more like that. Yeah, once you have like the eyes and everything, the reflections look very nice with this environment because of those big windows in there. But again, like you can always play with underexposing things a little bit. So for example, if the light, like the exposure is 0 here, I'm gonna try to minus 0.5. Right? And then the other way to do this, I mean, like sometimes you wanna keep the lighting according to the subsurface scattering, both playing together nicely, and you want to just like increase the overall brightness of the scene, you can actually play with the camera. So if you go to your perspective here, that's basically the one that's rendering from, I'm going to just go to view, select camera, and I'm going to go to the camera attributes in here. And if you go all the way down to camera attributes, you're gonna see there's an Arnold tab in here. And this one here has the exposure. So again, you can actually underexpose things. Let's do like -1. See, that goes like much less offensive, right? -3, so like really underexposing. Like, oh, it actually doesn't go down. It doesn't go lower than this. It's weird. Oh, it went now. Okay, so it's just like was kind of stuck. And then the same way you can go up, you can overexpose this to 1, for example, right? And this is the overall thing, is that overexposing everything that's in the scene, right? Like the skin and everything. It's basically like it's the camera is like a physical thing, you know? It's almost like playing with exposure of your camera. So let's do this. And then since we are here talking about the camera, let's talk a little bit about the depth of field as well. Since I'm trying to give you some tools to start doing some renders, you know, try to, you know, feed you as much information as possible, just like as a quick start for the renders. I'm going to talk a little bit about the depth of field. So the depth of field by default obviously is off. If you turn it on, you're going to see probably going to go super blurry. Not by much, it's a little bit blurry there. But you have to actually define what's the distance between the camera and the observer. Another thing that might be happening here is that thing, you know, it's like I don't have like, I have to do like a update in my scene, update in the full scene to be able to actually read all those values. But yeah, it's fairly in place in there. But let me show you how to tweak this. Let's do like a perspective. Oh, that's why. Perspective, let's see. Oh no, that's perspective 1. Okay, good. Let's just stop this right now. And one trick that I do is this. So if I have the eyeballs in there, Obviously, when I have the eyeballs, I try to have them separate as separate objects. So I can do this now. Let's just do this for the sake of it. Let's go to modeling, and you can go to your mesh and then say separate. And then it's basically going to create a grouping here with multiple objects inside of that group. You can actually just select this and just say edit, delete all, delete by type. So delete by type history. And in that case, it eliminated all the crap, like all the nodes that are attached to the history. And you can just press, select both of them and just say like Shift P, like Paul. And that should actually unparent everything. So they're gonna go down here. So now we can delete that. We don't need that stuff. So let's do this. And then basically I have my two objects in there. So I'm gonna make center. So I'm gonna centralize them. And then if I go back to my perspective here, right now you're not seeing it, but if I click in each one of them, I should be able to get like the distance between me, so the observer here, and the object itself. So to do that, you're gonna go to Windows, and then actually going to go to display, heads up display. And then here you're going to see there's object details. So right now it's showing me that's 22.973 from the camera. If I click this one, 22.79, this one, 24.712. So that's in relation to the center of the object, obviously. But I can use as a rough value in there. I normally measure by using the iris itself, so I can actually hit like the focus exactly on the iris. But in this case, I'm gonna just use the eyeball. So 22.973. Another way to do this is this way, check this out. If you select the camera and you just click copy tab, now you have a copy of the camera in here. So now the advantage of that is that if I select the camera, you know, so I don't need to select the camera, because if I select the camera, this goes away. So I can select the object and then you still have access to the camera and see the you know, it's like the values in there. So I'm gonna go back there to Arnold, and I'm just gonna plug that same amount in there, 22.973, 973 right here. And I can right click the word focus distance, just right click it and say set key, right? So there's a keyframe now on frame 1. So if I go to frame 2, probably it's gonna be pretty screwed up. The depth of field is gonna be completely out of place. But in this case here, for that specific angle is gonna work. So let's do the aperture size here. At this point, I don't have any, right? So that's why it's not creating any depth of field. So if I do something like this, let's see how it renders. There's no depth of field. So let's just zoom in here. If I add like a very high number, 5, for example. Wow, it's not, is it obeying my, is that because I'm using a too big of a number? Let's try 1 here. Oops, 1. That's interesting. It's not obeying my distance. 973. That's weird. 0.2. Oh, what happened? What happened? Please don't crash. Oh man, something happening there. Yeah, that's the problem about, it's thinking about it. Let's see if I can cancel it. The problem I have with like a interactive render like this is that if I'm going crazy with those values and everything, it's trying to recalculate every time. And then it locks, you know, it's like sometimes it takes a while to actually release it. So let's see. Let's see if I cancel it, how much I lost here, because I saved it before, but I think it was before this. Oh, okay, so it came back to life here, thank God. So let's see, just make sure that this is at 1. But it's very bizarre that actually is not obeying the distance, the focus distance. Let's try, select camera, 0.22, 22.973. Oh, maybe, let's try this. Maybe my settings here I'm inches right now. Let's see if we can keep it millimeters. Let's see if that makes more sense for Arnold. Let's see, 483, 523. If it's not that, then we can try centimeters. But there's one of those. Actually, I think it makes more sense for Arnold to calculate. That looks better. So let's try 58. Oh, Jesus. 58. So if it's 58, then we know it's centimeters actually. 58, 322. Let's see, like that. Let's see if that makes more sense. Yeah, that's what it is. So apparently, Arnold doesn't convert. I just realized that. So basically, like you're gonna have to have this set to your settings. Once you have the scale in place and everything, set it to centimeters. And in that case, Arnold's gonna be able to read that amount perfectly. So if you translate that 58, 352 to there, you should be able to get the perfect depth of field. So now I can play with this. So for example, if I use like a very high aperture size here, this is gonna look like a miniature, right? Still gonna get the focus right there in the eye, right? In the center of the eye, not necessarily at the surface because it's the center of the object. But, you know, it's like, and if you go lower, for example, like I would not use something much higher than I would say like 0.6, right? To get a little bit of depth of field in the ears, right? So you're gonna get just a natural look to it without render time increasing too much, right? So yeah, that's a tricky one, right? Like you have to actually match centimeters to be able to do that. I wish you would convert automatically, you know? It's like if I'm set to inches and it's seeing the viewport inches right there, I would expect it to, you know, to be able to just plug in there, but weird one. Another way to learn more about this is obviously in the manual here. They have like, if you go to cameras, they have like beautiful examples with images. And then, so if you go here, it's gonna show you like the stuff I was talking about, the exposure. So underexposing the whole image or overexposing. There's the vignetting you can use. I can show you how to do that as well. And then this is for animation, so we're not gonna be doing that. And then the depth of field. And here they talk about the depth of field. That's 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. There is also the number of blades, the polygon side. So you're gonna get like the defocus, you're gonna get like the number you set it, like the 3, 5, and 7 points. They have like the curvature of the blade as well. This is all simulating a natural camera lens, right? So same, this one here, I normally use the default. I don't like this this distortion for the depth of field. And then you can use normal maps as well to create distortions. For example, like a fisheye kind of distortion, right? So it's all explained in here. But what I can tell you guys right now is that if I select my background again, let's just like remove the other exposure. Let's do it 0 here. And then let's see if we can do, maybe like with the background, it's a little bit more bright. So let's get to this one, Art Studio. So Art Studio is a little bit brighter. So let's do a render with Art Studio here, like that. And you're gonna see, I'm gonna create the artificial vignetting here by adding a little map right here. So check this out. So you select your camera, go to the attributes, Control A for it. And then you're gonna see there's a filter map in here, right? So if you click this little texture here, you can plug actually, you can go to, let's see, Maya 2D textures. You can just use a ramp in here. And this ramp, you can just set it to circular or radial. So circular is gonna be the one I'm gonna be using here. And I'm gonna reverse it. So it's gonna be black outside and white around here. It should do something like that. But when it's completely black, the vignetting is very, very strong. So if I do something like this, you see like if I start playing with this, bring it closer here, it's gonna start closing and the vignette looks very, very tight, right? So obviously I'm using a very dark environment in there, so you cannot see very well the effect. But normally speaking, you would use something similar to this, but with slightly grayish here, not completely black. So you would do something like halfway or something like that to look like a more natural loss of luminosity around those edges, right? And if you can add that combined with the depth of field to defocus a little bit, it's almost like it creates a little bit of that natural look from a camera, right? At the same time, this is just like something you can do here, but I normally recommend to do in post, you know, it's like, because in post you have a lot more control. And if you want to increase the vignetting and everything or reduce it, it's much easier, right? So just like out of curiosity how to do that, it's just like here in filter map. For now, I'm just going to remove it. So break connection. To, you know, connect or disconnect, just right click and then, you know, break or create keyframes, all that stuff. So now we have this framing here that has the depth of field for the ears that we like. Let's go to this angle here. And now for this angle, I want the focus to be in this eye, not the other eye. So this one is giving me a 57,097. So let's just copy that again. Let's just copy the tab. So I have my camera here. And then I'm going to click again this guy. So I have 57,097. Going to go down, Arnold. So 57, 0.97. Oops, 0.97. Set key. So right click and then set key, right? And then for the last one is going to be also this eye here. And this eye shows me that's at 62.026. Again, the focus is right in the middle of the eyeball, right? So it's not like a precise thing that we are focusing exactly in the iris. But once we have the actual geometry in there with the iris, then we can put the focus right there. Another way to do it is to create a very tiny object. For example, like you can create like a sphere, make it very tiny and put where you want, for example, the surface of the eye. And then for the attributes of the object, you just make sure it's not rendering. So the way to do that, if you want to click an object, for example, make sure it doesn't render, just click on it, press Ctrl-A to open the attributes. And then under the render stats here, you can just say like, yeah, don't cast shadow and no primary visibility and no nothing. You just like turn everything off. And then it should be there in the scene just for a reference for the point where you want to focus. And then, but it's not going to render, you know, so you can do that as well. But in this case here is just like a rough estimate, right? It's kind of like right, not right in the surface, but good enough. So now if I circle here, you're going to see each one of the keyframes has a different focus distance, right? So at this point here, if I was happy with the scene the way it is, I could simply go to the render like we talked about before and just like hit render sequence, right? And just go to sleep. And in the morning I should have all those things rendered with the correct depth of field. Just make sure you, the number of frames matches and you should be good to go. So let's see from this angle here, if I get a nice depth of field, which we can try by exaggerating things a little bit. So we see like the backgrounds are already going pretty out of focus in there. So to look him look more like a miniature, you can actually really exaggerate that like 2. And then the depth of field is going to start bleeding into this edges here as well, right? It's going to look like a tiny little toy. Yeah, you guys are so quiet. Do you have any question, guys? I know like I'm just like putting a lot of information out there for you guys, and that's gonna be basically like from now on, it's gonna be almost every day is gonna be a lot of information. But the cool thing is that everything is recorded. You guys can just like rewatch it to to get their questions solved. But I think it's cool. It's like it's one of those one of the parts of the class that I like. It's when you start seeing the character more like a physical object, because that's how you relate. It's like I remember like there is this big wars between traditional artists and digital artists forever, especially it's like Facebook back in the day. And nowadays everybody likes each other's art, which is really cool. It's like, especially with Instagram. And I remember like when I was posting my stuff, I was doing my best to make my pieces look physical, because it breaks a barrier, right? Like It's almost like people stop judging the media and they just look at the result. And then if it's a traditional artist seeing a sculpture that's a digital sculpture as a physical object, they stop judging. They just look at the forms, you know. It's like, oh, that's really cool. Especially if you do some renders look like clay renders, you know. It's like normal, like you get some followers, like some traditional artists following you. And then later on they feel betrayed, right? No, just kidding. But at the end of the day, that's what it is, you know. It's like the media shouldn't matter at all, you know. It's like we should be able to actually explore whatever you need to use and to express your ideas, you know. It's like the whole function, I believe, like for an artist has is to communicate, right? It's either you are someone who's actually producing work for a company, which I do as well, and in that case, you're just a piece in the engine, right? Like you're creating something for someone else, which is basically like you're following instructions. Basically, you're trying your best to achieve the vision for a director, right? But when you're doing your own thing, it's a different thing, right? Like it's a author. It's like you're your own director, so you're doing the whole creation, the whole storytelling, everything. You know, it's like it comes from you, and in that case, it's a much more honest thing because you're really trying to communicate with your audience, right? Like you're expressing your feelings or your inner emotions or whatever. There's a very good Brazilian artist who just posted a new work yesterday. His name was Mariano Steiner, and he posted this beautiful piece that looks a little bit like Richard McDonald's kind of sculptures, like very expressive, you know. And I don't remember what's the emotion that he was representing, but it was definitely like an emotion that's related to this whole condition about being cooped up in the house, you know. It's like with the pandemic and everything. So it's pretty cool, you know. It's like I love the way that artists approach their thing, and you know, it's like that's why I don't think I can ever stop doing my personal work. And I'm so glad that I can actually do personal work while trying to pass this information down to people like you guys. So that's like, it's really rewarding for me. But any question? Sorry.
I would have a question if it's possible.
Yeah.
Regarding eye placement. Have you any rules in mind, like rules when you place the eyes like vertically or the top of the head, and horizontally in front, like in line with the lips, for example? So regarding eyes placement, if you have some things to say. I usually struggle with it because I tend to do the eyes too big, like the
yes,
and this is an issue for me, for example.
Yeah, so like about the eyes, I mean, like you see, like the eye placement in this character here, in my case here, is a little bit low. I would say like that angle. Let's see from the side. I don't know if that's the question, but let me talk about this one here as well. So I noticed like in the render right there that my eyeball, you see, like I have this angle here between those eyelids, right? Like one is a little bit more pronounced, the other one's lower. In this case here, if I bring the eyeball out, I can tell that the eye can be a little bit more buried underneath the top eyelid to look more natural. So, you know, it's like the size of the eyeball is one thing, but the placement, like you said, is very important. Because if you have something like this, right, that the eyeball look like it's kind of like a flat like that, it doesn't sell the idea that's actually a realistic eyeball. But as soon as you bring it, buried it a little bit more under the eyelid, you get this, you know, like this angle that actually follows the eyelids in there. So it's like, I noticed that in my render in there. But about the size of the eyes, I would say if you follow that convention that I just put out there, like with the average size of the eyeball, if you have that in place, and you have like the height of the face around 9 inches, like we talked about as an average, if you have both relationships in place, you shouldn't have a problem with the eyes looking too big, you know, unless you do something like really stretch the eyelids to actually try to reveal them kind of like forcibly, you know, something like, you know, it's like if you open this a little bit too much, kind of bring it back right here, you know, to look like they're pretty much like gigantic there, right? That's another thing. But if you have like a semi-natural placement, especially like from the side, you have to be able to have some depth. I mean, like a lot of people model and the eye doesn't have enough depth, right? It looks like the corner is right around there. They have to have enough depth, look natural. from the back, from the side. And also they have to bulge enough conforming to the eyeball. So I don't know if that like it's related to your question. Like,
yes, it is. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's like it's a tricky one because it's a combination of how much it pops out. Some people have like a much more buggy eye, right? Like it pops a lot, and that actually drags the whole surface of the eyelids with it, right? Because it's kind of like a sticky surface. And then the other one is like the corners. Like I said, sometimes you get like the eyeballs in the correct size in relation to the face and everything. But then some people either pull this area too much back to force like a bigger eye, or too shallow, and then it becomes like a tiny eye, right? So it's like yeah, this relationship is very important, and that one has to work together with this relationship with the orbital bone in here, like the cavity. If it's too much, like if you model this orbital too much, like it's like too much back like this, then you're going to try to force the eye to follow it, But if you have it in place, so you can actually see that line of the, it's like the entire hole in here is in place, then things start looking a little bit more natural. But it is a tricky one, man. I'm going to say that sometimes if you start wrong with that part, things just don't work, One thing that's important as well, now that you mentioned that about the eyes, is that the caruncula area here, it normally pops out a little bit. So it's not like a flat thing against the face. So it goes back when you see it from the bottom like that. So it goes, it's like it conforms to the eyeball like this. Let's see, from the bottom, conforms to the eyeball. But then when it gets to this area here, it comes forward again. So it goes down and then up again. And it creates this tension, it's almost like there's a little web that's created around here. And then obviously, depending on the ethnicity as well, sometimes you're going to have this fold covering, for example, an Asian person, right? Like you're going to have this fold kind of like semi-covering in there. Is a little bit more straight, have too much of that depth. The tension starts a little bit higher. But yeah, it's a matter of like really observing each one of the, the subjects, different subjects. It's always like a very nice learning curve every time you try something different.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
There's one thing I'm gonna ask you, Chris,
Yeah.
about this curvature of the eyes and the parts of the caruncula conforms. There's any rule for it, like to be more pronounced or more definite in the skull?
I would say there's no rule, because I mean, I was wrong so many times, like trying to come up with like something, a recipe that fits all of them, and then I would just like see some very weird people, man, like with very unusual features, and then all of a sudden you're proven wrong. So I would say like it's a very broad kind of like set of like possibilities, when it comes to the human face. Yeah. But as a kind of like a general rule that I use on my own, it has this curvature. I mean, like it has this, if I draw it here, it kind of like has this interesting, it's like line that starts, starts around here. Let's go a little bit more resolution, actually, like that. So it starts around here, and then it kind of comes out again.
Okay.
And then that's basically like not as much as I did in there, obviously. But and then here, this whole area, for example, you have a little bit more of a depth in here. And then this gets a little depth in here. It's almost like this echoes this little form in here. So you get a little pocket to it, But yeah, there's definitely not a, it's like a rule for it for sure. It's like people are very different.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, man.
No problem. Yeah. But yeah, so for today, I think I'm gonna just try to maybe like do a little bit of poking around, because tomorrow we're gonna be projecting whatever you have. Like I said before, you don't have to have like a model completely done or anything. As long as the proportions are fairly okay, we're gonna the whole thing tomorrow is gonna be just like projecting this into a topology that we can use, and then from that point on, we're gonna continue our sculpting like nothing happened, right? We're just gonna have like a topology we can actually play with, and then once we have that a little bit more in place for pores and wrinkles and all this stuff, then we're gonna start actually covering the skin with the detail, and at the same time, as long as we do carefully, we're going to be able to play with the primary and secondary forms still, even after we start putting the detail. And maybe it's not the ideal way of doing it, but the fact that I have to keep up with the program, you know, it's like kind of like I have to make sure that every new class I have new stuff to teach. So that's why I kind of force myself, but I don't want to force you guys to, you know, if you're not completely comfortable with the forms and, you know, let's say, oh, I don't want to cover my, you know, my character with pores and wrinkles right now because, you know, I'm not comfortable with proportions just yet. So feel free to just take more time and do it in your own time and then go back to the videos, you know, so I can watch how I'm doing. But because I have to keep up with it, that's basically what I'm going to have to do tomorrow. You know, it's like I'm going to do projection. And then next week, we're going to start actually sculpting finer detail already. But always, you know, with this hook on the primary and secondary forms all at the same time. So yeah, it's a little bit different way of thinking it. But once you do one character, two characters, three characters this way, it kind of like becomes pretty like, I'm not going to say easy because it's a lot of work, right? Like to do manual work, but it makes more sense, you know. I have a couple of students who did just the not the live class, but the pre-recorded, and they did the first character and it looked okay, and then the second one looked much better, and then the third one. And but the feedback I get like from those classes is always like, man, I rewatched the class again, and I just discovered something else that I didn't pay attention before. Because like I said, like I don't have like, it's not completely linear, right? Like in one single class, I talk about multiple different subjects. And then there is always a little thing here and there that even for experienced artists, you know, it's like, it's just a different way of approaching that can give you an insight, you know. But for today, I think what I wanted to do, which was to give you some tools to actually be able to render some cool, you know, little scenes. This was all done during the course of this class today. So if you are not getting like the results similar to this in terms of lighting in the shader, just make sure you go back in the video, check what the settings I tweaked in there, and the information should be all there for you. And if you have something that really got like into a weird bug that you just don't know how to resolve, please just post in the group, you know, it's like, and either me or some of the other students always are there like to help as well, you know. So thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too, guys. Thank you so much.
I have a quick question if you have time.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Do you prefer to work in flow, or do you try to be more conscious when you're actually doing things?
I would say like if I'm working on my own, not in front of the students, you know, I'm gonna use a certain rhythm, you know. It's like I'm gonna try to do things a little bit more, a bit less organized, I would say, more organically, but less organized. And but if I'm doing it in front of the students, I have to try to make sense of things, you know. And sometimes it's not like the most natural way for me to do it, but it makes sense if I put myself on your place as someone who is seeing the information for the first time, you know, if it makes sense.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Yeah, no problem, man. Have a great one, guys.
Thanks a lot, man.